Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be watching King Kong. So, King Kong is a 1933 Marion C. Cooper film, and basically is kind of credited as if one of the greatest films of all time. I think it's considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest horror film of all time, which I'm not really quite sure on the horror side of it. And introduces one of the most iconic monsters of the silver screen, King Kong, predating even the mighty Godzilla, and being a big influence on the filmmakers over at Toho to even create Godzilla in the first place. But yes, again, this film has gone down in history not just as a film itself, but it's one of those rare instances when the title character transcends the film he's even in. Extending well into pop culture in many different ways, in other films as well. Although while none of them being quite as iconic as the original, obviously, the name King Kong brings to mind a certain iconography that is, like Godzilla even, is kind of inescapable. Whether you're familiar with the lore of King Kong, whether you've even watched the movies, any of them, you know what King Kong is. A very distinctive image comes to mind of a large gorilla ape-like creature of some kind. The gorilla side of it kind of leaned on more heavily in various iterations, particularly the 2005 remake by Peter Jackson. But in this original film, these filmmakers, they travel to this Skull Island, this lost kind of uncharted ancient island where it essentially is a lost world where you have dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures still here, and this singular giant ape, which all the natives essentially worship as a god. And essentially, Kong is the god of this island, and it's essentially kind of still harkening from an age of where the idea of a lost world, where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote one where it took place on a lost plateau in the Amazon. This is a lost island, and essentially it is a story very much kind of from old world and adventure story where they go to the island, they see all these kind of prehistoric creatures, and then they encounter Kong, the ape wonder of the world, and it's basically this symbol of like power from the old world, this prehistoric, this titanic, ancient monster of sorts, and naturally they see him and they want to bring him back to civilization because that's a great idea, right? They essentially want to do what mankind has done with the rest of the natural world, with the rest of the wild world, and that is tame it, chain it, bind it, and make a buck off of it. A lot of you guys probably know the famous iconography where you see Kong fight the T-Rex, which, King Kong's cool, but ultimately I was always rooting for the T-Rex because I'm a dinosaur fan. T-Rex is my favorite real-life animal. And dinosaurs are way closer to Godzilla, so, T-Rex should have won that fight, but, therein lies the real science fiction of this story, the fact that Rex lost that fight, but I digress. But then, obviously, the famous scene where Kong is brought to New York City, breaks free, and climbs the Empire State Building, only to ultimately be shot down, where he meets his demise. And essentially, on the surface, it could look very much like a monster movie. You go to a lost world, you get chased around by monsters, you bring one back, and it runs rampages across New York City before ultimately being defeated by, mankind. But really what the story is about, it is essentially a coming of age in a weird way from mankind, where we romanticize the old world. We as much as we are afraid of the dark corners of the world, we are also fascinated by them because it's something we don't know. It's something we don't yet understand, and therefore there is a degree of romanticism to that. Whereas once we shine a light on every corner of the world, while our knowledge and understanding of it will increase tremendously, we can't help but feel that some of the magic will die too, because now we won't be able to look out to any corner of it and ask ourselves what might be out there, because, well, we know what's out there. And this is kind of almost a bit of a childhood fantasy of finding a lost world, a world that's kind of been untouched by time, where dinosaurs roam and there's a giant ape where people worship like a god. It's a very kind of innocent view of the world in which we wonder, is there something grander out there? Is there something more amazing that, beyond our vision, beyond our field of view? And our unfortunate need to then conquer it. It's not so much to have it out there; it needs to be defeated. It is a mountain to be climbed. It is a new land in which we can, plant our flag in. And Kong represents, that undiscovered frontier, that last new land, that last bit of wilderness, that last bit of old world, untamed, wild earth for mankind to essentially conquer. And when you see Kong, bound in chains in front of an audience in the heart of civilization, that is mankind essentially what mankind has done to the world, and that is conquer the world. It is kind of it's fascination with the unknown, with the wild, with the primeval. It is a story of our need to essentially be dominant over that which we ultimately fear. Because while we admire and kind of again romanticize kind of the ancient world, the wild, the untouched corners of the world, places that are untouched by civilization, we are also fearful of it because pre-civilization, mankind was prey to all the beasts of the wild. We were very much on the receiving end. So we appreciate their strength, but I think at an instinctive level, we never want to go back to that. So while we look at Kong and we see this powerful, amazing creature, and it's very easy for us to see why these island natives worship him as a god, but at the same time, we are also inundated with this need to conquer him, because as long as Kong, reigns free, there will always be something that we need to fear out in the world. And therefore, as amazing as he is to look upon, we need to shackle Kong. So at the end, when you see Kong shot down and brought down, it is essentially the last gasp of the ancient world. It is the final breath of a world that once was primal and beautiful and strong and savage and amazing, and it is its end. It is mankind having finally achieved dominion over every beast of the field, sky, and sea. There is no creature in this world now that can, make us live in fear. The natural world now lives within our shadow. Whereas now not something as great as Kong has been defeated. He's bigger than a lion. He's bigger than a bear. He was the final mountain for mankind to climb, to defeat. And mankind did. And with Kong dead, it is essentially our ascension to full dominion, but also the death of that which we always kind of look to the horizon to and wonder. And with Kong gone, we now know there's nothing left out there. There are no more mountains to climb, metaphorically speaking, of course. There are no more dark corners of the world in which could hold wondrous secrets. We found them, and we've conquered them. And as such, the price we pay for our dominion is, the magic of the world gone. The fire that kind of drives, that primal ferocity that burns in all living things has been dampened to some degree and extinguished within ourselves. So on the surface, Kong is very much a cool monster movie. And if that's all you want to take it as, that's fine, because it does very well at that. But at the same time, it is also more. And it also is a little bit too, and I've heard it compared to as a bit of an allegory for the death of the American dream, because this was during the Great Depression in the United States. So it is, again, Kong represents something big and bold and grand, and that was supposed to be the American dream. You could come from abroad, come to the United States, and achieve your dream. Anybody could be something. It doesn't matter what your background is. Old money, new money, poor, whatever your religion is, you could come to the United States and achieve greatness. It was this great thing. And Kong was this big, bold, proud king. To see him cut down was essentially a bit of a metaphor for, America being cut down. This big, great nation brought to its knees. And while not destroyed like Kong, it was essentially a sober awakening for everyone when realized that the United States, this great nation, was not above being pulled down, was not above being affected by real world problems, that bad things could happen here. People could fail here. People could lose here. So King Kong, an outsider, a foreigner even, come to America. His name was in lights. He was on a stage for the world to see, and yet he fell from that stage. He was brought down in New York. So there's a lot of metaphors here. The death of childhood dreams, the death of wonder, the death of the American dream. A lot of death, but ultimately it is a grand story, and it is a story that has survived the test of time and produced a character that has survived the test of time, who continues to permeate himself within pop culture, even to this day, with new movies with this character, with reimaginings of this character living on, and having inspired other filmmakers to create their own kind of monsters that represent their own messages, their own meanings. And again, when Godzilla and Kong faced off against one another in 1962, it was really, a battle of the allegories. It was essentially, mankind's greatest fears in a somber reality is kind of made flesh and giant on screen, going head to head. And it was a great moment. It was a great moment to see that these characters were going to live on. They were going to become part of our modern mythos, our modern legends. So King Kong, like Godzilla, like Frankenstein's monster, like Dracula, these are beings that will always, while being creatures of fiction, will always live with us, because they are manifestations of our own fears, our own hubris. And it's great to see that, 2018, in a couple years, King Kong, we'll see him again on the big screen. And again, it's cool to see that these monsters don't ever really die, because that is really what makes monsters special, is that they may die on screen, but their legends never die. They are with us nevertheless, and no matter how many times Kong might die on the big screen, there'll always be another King Kong movie. And, I take heart in that. But anyway, guys, what did you think? Have you seen King Kong, the original, the classic? If so, give me some of your thoughts. Let me know how you feel about the character. Let me see how you feel about this iteration of him, and even all the other, iterations of the character after that, and kind of how you feel he has influenced kind of the modern cinematic landscape. If you have not seen King Kong, I will leave links in the description section below where you can go check it out. Give it a watch. It's a classic. If for no other reason, just to, say you've seen King Kong, I kind of feel King Kong is one of those movies where it's required viewing for life. Whether you're into these kind of movies or not, you got to see King Kong. Do so. Come back. Give me some of your thoughts. Love to know what you think. And as always, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!